So, as I said, welcome to you all. How wonderful to have so many of you here this morning. My name is Liz Woodham, and I'm one of the members of the NRICH team here in Cambridge. And I'm joined by Charlie Gilsdale, and Ems Lord. And between the three of us, we'll be working on some mathematics with you today. So as you may know, today's webinar is taking place as part of Maths Week England. And I'm delighted that I can see that you're from all over the UK, not necessarily just England, and there are possibly even a few schools joining us from further afield as well. So you're all very welcome. The idea of today's webinar is we're going to introduce you to one of our favourite tasks on the NRICH site. So we're going to work on some maths together. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be really interested in hearing about your thinking, how you're thinking about the task. And there is so much to this task that there will be plenty for you to explore back in the classroom after the event this morning as well. Charlie, is there anything else you'd like to say by way of introduction before I get going and share my screen?
No, I don't think so.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to now share the NRICH website. So I'm hoping that you can see this browser. Charlie, can you see that browser?
I can.
Brilliant. So here we have an activity called Fruity Totals. I'll just scroll it up a little bit. And
You can even enlarge it a little bit if you want, Liz.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that. Oops. Better?
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Okay. So what we've got here is an interactivity that one of our colleagues has developed, and we're going to work on it together. And as I said, we'd love to hear about your thinking. So you can see that we've got a grid, and in the grid you can see, I hope, that there are various different pictures of fruit. Each fruit has a particular value, so it's getting a number, a numerical value, and it says underneath, look, that it'll be between 1 and 15 inclusive. So it could be 1, it could be 15, or anywhere in between. So in other words, where you see an apple, an apple will always have the same value from 1 to 15, somewhere between that. And on the grid, we've been given the sum of each row. So here, the 20 means that in this top row, all the fruit there adds to 20. And you're given, of course, the totals for each of the other rows. But as well, you're given the totals for each column. So they appear at the bottom here. So for example, this 20 refers to the total of this column. So I'm sure you can guess what your challenge is going to be. For this particular grid, we're going to try and work out, have a think about what the value of each fruit might be, just so that we're kind of all talking the same language, shall we say. It might make things a bit easier. I'm going to suggest that we've got apples, bananas, cherries, and plums. Okay? So have a little look at that grid. Now, at various points during this morning, we're going to be asking you teachers to post your class's thinking on the chat, please. We're really interested, I keep saying this, in the thinking rather than just an answer. Okay. So we're going to give you now a bit of time. Have a look at that grid. Where might you start? What information here are you going to use to try and figure out the value of each shape, of each fruit? Charlie, is there anything you'd like to say before we give some time?
No, not yet. I might suggest a good starting point in a minute.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And then, but let everybody have a think about it before I chip in.
Okay, so over to you. Some thinking time in your classes, chat to each other. Teachers, please, as I say, don't post spoilers yet. take some time in your classes. Where would you start? How are you going to go about this task? We'll give you, let's say, 3 minutes or so to start with, and then Charlie may reveal a good starting point in case that's helpful. So have a little think.
So Liz, I see in the chat, a lot of people are talking about the far right-hand column and wanting to make use of that. I'd like to suggest that on its own, that doesn't give us, it gives us some information, but I'd like to suggest that combining, thinking about the far right column and the bottom row and thinking about why looking at those two at the same time, or, after you've looked at the right-hand column, what can you do? Why might you look at the bottom row next?
Thank you, Charlie. That's a really helpful suggestion. And as you say, I can see that some groups have suggested places to start. It's helpful you bringing a couple of ideas together. Thank you.
Okay, so somebody called Miss Harris has taken on board this idea. So I think at these early stages, we're going to give away some of the strategies. But after today, we hope you'll all work on this on your own. So
just before, sorry, Charlie, just before we have a more of a detailed look, I noticed that a couple of groups are mentioning trial and error, which I think I would possibly call trial and improvement rather than trial and error, but I know exactly what you mean, trying something out and then adjusting what you do depending on what's happened that first time, which can be a really helpful mathematical strategy. And sometimes I don't think we value it enough. So some of you from your posts are going down that way of working, which can be a really good way of starting. And in a moment, we'll be sharing some strategies which don't rely on trial and improvement, and perhaps make your method a little bit more efficient. The other thing that I'd just like to flag up as well before we go into something specific, Charlie, was somebody posted about the use of doubles was interesting, which I thought was a really good, really interesting comment to have made. Yes, I agree. And I think we'll go into that in a bit more detail. Sorry, Charlie, over to you.
Okay, so I think what I'm about to say is what Holy Family Primary School, Miss Ward has typed in. So they looked at the far right-hand column and added up to 26. It had 2 plums and 2 apples. So they figured out that if you had one of each, 1 plum and 1 apple must be half of 26. So that comes to 13. And then if you look at the bottom...
Charlie, I'm just going to interrupt you very, very briefly. Sorry. I hope everybody's okay with the way I'm recording there, that it's hopefully, as I'm recording, as Charlie's speaking, that you can see that I'm using the P for a plum, an A for an apple, and that you're happy with my notation. Doesn't mean to say it's the only way of recording at all, and you may have done something different, but just to check, that's what I mean. Sorry, Charlie.
That's okay. And then I noticed that the bottom row has got a plum and an apple. So I know that the bottom row, which all comes to 21, must be plum and apple, which is 13, plus a couple of bananas. And that all comes to 21. And because I know that the plum and the apple add up to 13, I can work out that the 2 bananas must make up the rest. And 21 minus 13 comes to 8. So if 2 bananas are worth 8, then each banana is 4. So I think you can put 4s on top of all the bananas on your diagram.
That's a good idea, Charlie. Yeah, great. So here we go.
So what I've tried to do is, I mean, one can do trial and improvement, like you said, but sometimes it can take quite a long time. So I'm often looking, is there a sort of, a quick way of getting at the answer?
I like what Manor Park have posted here about how they're giving a little bit more detail about how they're using their trial and improvement, which is really helpful. Yes, once you've decided, okay, I'm going to try a banana being 3, then I'm going to use banana 3 in, say, this row and see what happens. And if if it all falls down, then I know that my banana doesn't equal 3, and I can go back and try something else. Okay, Charlie, sorry, carry on.
Okay, so I'm not going to give away too much, but I think now I can use the top row from the information that we have so far.
Yeah.
And what you've written there.
Yeah.
I think we can look at the top row.
Yeah.
And figure out what the cherries are worth. So
Okay.
can I give everybody a minute to think about that and to figure out, maybe to write in the chat in a similar way to how you've been writing, Liz, sort of in code, so you don't have to write the whole word bananas and the whole word plums.
Mathematicians are inherently lazy. We like to do things, we like to find shortcuts, so we don't have to do so much writing, which is, as Charlie said, if you use a similar kind of code, then it's easy for us all to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Yes, so what do you think? How could we use the top?
Okay, there seems to be a lot of agreement.
Absolutely.
That the top row has got a plum and an apple.
Yeah.
And we know that the plum and an apple add up to 13.
Yeah.
And it also has got a banana, which is 4.
Yeah.
So we have 13 plus 4.
Yeah.
And it all adds up to 20.
That's right.
So 13 and 4 add up to 17. So the cherry must be worth 3.
Absolutely.
And then I think I'm imagining, because a lot of people are telling us, oh, I've worked out the plum now. So
Yeah.
if we put in the third column,
Yeah, this one here.
the cherries are worth 3 each.
Yeah.
My
I need a different, sorry, I should have used a different color pen by the stage, possibly, sorry.
Well, it's my fault. I was very happy with your pink. Okay, but the cherries are worth 3 each,
Yes.
and the banana's worth 4. So that all comes to 10, and the whole column is worth 11.
Yes.
So that tells us the plum is worth just 1 more.
Absolutely. 3 and 3 and 4, as you say, comes to 10. So this means the plum must be 1.
And then we can work out the rest. Now, some people find it a bit strange, but some mathematicians sort of stop at this stage and say, oh, well, I know I can do the rest. So the rest is a bit boring. Let's go on to the next problem. Of course, you might want to fill in all the gaps and then confirm that all the rows and all the columns do add up. But we've got more problems to show you. So I'm tempted to be sort of mathematical about this and say, oh, I know I can do the rest.
Absolutely. And do remember that, you know, the interactivity does have a show the solution button. So, you know, you can check your thinking. As Charlie says, you may want to complete the grid code totally, but you can always check your thinking using that button, which we won't do now, just in case some of you out there would prefer to wait. Okay, so Charlie, it was interesting, wasn't it, that although we talked through a way of solving that particular setup, you gave some really nice suggestions of the row and the column, which we could use as a good way in. Actually, many groups who were working with us this morning did something slightly different. So a whole wealth of ways of going about solving that task. And I think that's why we're really keen to move on and show you something, another version, so that you can have a go at solving and think about different ways of solving. So Charlie, shall we look at...
Well, the next one, when we looked at it earlier in the week, we thought we found 4 different ways of solving it. So there's a challenge. So I'm wondering, because the code is in the teacher's resources, Liz,
yeah,
I wonder whether we just should show the teachers where they can find the code, where they can find the code to what we've just done.
Good idea.
And how to upload it, so that if after today we've gone too fast over some examples, everybody can go back.
That's a really good idea.
Revisit them.
So, so this was the grid that we've just had a go at today. And if you, and I love the way some of you are still working on the maths, that's great. If you wanted to, what you can do is if you click on this purple cog, you can see that there's a long code here. Now that long code gives you the exact setup that we had, the apples, the grid exactly like it is. So teachers, if you would like to recreate any of the grids that we're going to use during this webinar, what you can do is you can have a little look at the teachers resources section on the left-hand side here. And if we scroll down a little bit, we've popped in here the codes that we intend to use today. We know we won't get around to using all of these, but we've specially chosen these codes as being good ones to work on in this order. So that first one there is the one that we've just had a look at, and we're now going to have a look at this one. So what you can do if you're given a code, we could demonstrate this. If I copy this code and I go back to the grid and I click, let me go up a little bit, I click on the settings and I can paste this new code into here. I then need to make sure I click as well, so I get that pink outline, and then I'm going to click here. Settings will take effect when you apply them in the current window. Click, and here's a new grid for us all to look at. So if you wanted to look at any of the grids that we're sharing this morning, then you can find those in the teachers resources section. So enough of me
of course,
talking.
sorry Liz, and of course there is a restart button at the bottom of the interactivity there, and that just gives you random generated grids. So both teachers and students, you might want to just randomly generate new grids, but we're offering you a few which we think are particularly interesting because they offer a variety of ways at the solution.
Okay, so what do you think? I think perhaps we should give you a little bit of time to have a look at this on your own, chat within your class. And once again, please don't post any spoilers at this stage. So we're not asking for solutions, but after a couple of minutes, you may like to suggest where you're starting, because that might help others for those people who haven't quite got off the ground. So let's give you a couple of minutes to have a go at this grid. If you haven't got off the ground, if you'd like a little bit of a hint as to where to start, I suggest you look at the chat, because many of you have been posting where you're starting, which is really helpful. I can see that some of you are saying that you think you've solved it. I wonder what I'm going to ask next. I wonder if you could solve it in a different way. It'd be a good check as well, wouldn't it?
So Liz, I know we've got other codes that we're wanting to show, and I'm wondering whether what we ought to do is sort of mark out on the grid, so diagrammatically what some people are saying,
That's
but
a good
then
idea.
not necessarily solve
Work
the
things
problem.
through.
So for example, if you were to put a colored line through the first row and the first column in the same color, as a way of indicating, as a way of indicating, okay. So I think that if I look at the first row, I can work out what 1 apple and 1 banana are worth.
Which is very similar to what we did last time.
And if I look at the first column and I know what 1 apple and 1 banana are worth, I can then work out what a plum is worth. And if I know what a plum is worth, could you do pink third column, please?
Lost my mouse. Where's my mouse gone? Aha, there it is.
If I know what the plum is worth, I can then work out what the bananas are worth. And once I know what the bananas are worth, everything else falls into place because I know I can work out what apples are worth and so on. So that is one.
That's one way.
Yes. So could we either have a different color or rub those out? So we're not going to work out the solution to this because we don't want to spoil this completely for everybody. But that is the strategy that some people have talked about. But actually, instead of rubbing everything out, Liz, could you just rub out the third column?
Okay. This one?
Yes, and the first column. And now color in the last column, because I think some people did this. I saw in the chat that some people used what apple and banana were worth.
Sorry.
You must have the eraser still on.
I have, sorry.
It's okay.
There we go. So we had the top.
And the far right column. And they used that to work out what the cherries were worth.
Yes.
And then it's not necessarily obvious what to do, but could you put a box around the bottom 2 rows next, Liz? The whole 2, that's it.
Yeah, now that's interesting, isn't it? What are we going to do with those, Charlie?
Okay, I'm going to say all that lot, all those 8 fruits in the bottom 2 rows. Okay, they contain everything that's in the far right column. So in that box, I've got an apple, a banana, and 2 cherries. And the far right column tells me what an apple and a banana and 2 cherries are worth.
Yes.
So there's 26 there.
Yes.
But the whole box must be worth 41 plus 37. The totals of the 2 rows. So the whole thing, I know, comes to 78. And it's made up from 4 plums plus everything in the far right-hand column.
I agree.
I think I can use that to work out what the plums are worth. And again, I'm not going to do the calculating.
No, we won't give everything away that far.
But that is a very different way of solving it to what we did earlier.
It is. Yeah, it has a different feel, doesn't it? So there we've outlined, well, two
very different strategies.
Very different strategies. Yeah, exactly. I love the fact.
Can I offer one last one, which again is very different?
Please do.
Okay. Let's look at that box, shall we? In the bottom.
Bottom, yeah.
What I'm thinking is that going to the market and buying 4 plums, an apple and a banana and 2 cherries, and the whole thing gets priced or it weighs, 41 plus 37, whatever it is. Now, what I notice about the 2 rows is that the top row has got 2 plums and a cherry.
Yes.
And the bottom row also has got 2 plums and a cherry.
It does, yeah.
So top row and bottom row are almost identical.
Yeah.
But the top row's got a banana.
Yeah.
Bottom row's got an apple.
All right. So this is telling us something about, we can compare the banana and apple value, I guess, can't we?
So yes, because the top row is worth 4 more than the bottom row.
Yes.
So that must be because the banana is worth 4 more than the apple.
Because everything else is the same in the row. Yeah.
Everything, yeah, I've got 2 plums in both rows. I've got cherries in both.
Yeah.
Now, if I know that the banana is worth 4 more than the apple, I can now go to the top row.
Yeah.
Because I know that the banana and the apple are up to 12. And I can just think, oh, right, well, banana's worth 4 more than the apple. So I think that must be, am I going to give it away? I think this is going to be 8.
So we know that, yeah, they add, so a banana and an apple together add to 12. And we also know from what you've just said that a banana is 4 more than an apple. So yeah, I think we could work out then, couldn't we?
Yes.
Banana and apple is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that again is a completely different strategy.
Completely different.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you, Charlie. I love the fact that those of you at back at school are still working away. It's lovely to read your comments when you feel you've cracked it. We hope that it's impossible for us to know to be able to tailor the speed of this webinar to suit absolutely all of you. So we're really glad that you're continuing to work away, and hope that you're keeping a little eye on some of our a little ear on some of our conversations to inform next time. So Charlie, we've got about 10 minutes left. What do you think? Shall we have a look at one more of this, or should we try one more?
Okay, I've got a suggestion. Can we clear the screen?
Yes.
And then just click on restart a few times, just to show everybody what happens.
Okay, so here we go. Oh, is that working? Okay, try again, restart.
Sometimes I refresh the whole window.
Yeah, I might have to do that. Let me refresh the whole thing. There we go.
And if you get bored of looking at this, you just, yeah, there we are. So so this is randomly produced. We haven't seen this one before.
Oh, right. Okay.
But can we also, Liz,
yes,
go to the settings menu,
yeah,
and just show everybody that there are 4 levels, and we've been working on level 1 problems.
This is only level 1, what we've done so far.
Yes, so we know that there are some secondary age students today, and they may feel like having a look at some of the higher levels. Shall we just look at, I don't know, level 3 or 4? And
yeah, let's see. Let's have a quick look and just see. So I'm going to click 3, and I'm just going to click again in the current window so that it gives us an example. So can you see how this already looks a little bit different, because we've got some question marks. So we're not being given the total of every row and every column this time. So this
less information.
Less information, right, Charlie? Yeah, so this is going to potentially mean a little bit more thinking. We can still use some of the thinking we've already rehearsed, because I can see straight away in this right-hand column, we could perhaps make some deductions. Whether they will be useful immediately is another question.
I was thinking that, oh yes, that's easy, because 2 apples and 2 plums, I can work out what 1 apple and 1 plum is, and I can put that in the bottom row. And then I saw that the bottom row doesn't tell me what the total is. Good
point. So maybe me noticing that is actually not very helpful at the moment. Yeah.
I'm just curious, Liz. Yeah. What does level 5 look like?
That's a good question. Let's have a little look, Charlie. Give you a taster of level 5. Here we go. Wow. So we've only got 4 totals now. We've got 2 rows and 2 columns without a total.
That's going to be trickier.
It's definitely going to be trickier.
Wow. Maybe one should move on to level 2 and level 3 before having a go.
I think that would be very
Level 4
sensible,
and
Charlie,
5.
wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be sensible? Shall we finish off by looking, just giving you a quick look at one more level 1, just so we can apply some of our thinking one last time. So I think I've got here a new one, which I had prepared earlier, but in case you'd like, let me copy the code and pop it on the chat in case any of you would like to get it up in front of you. There we go. So begin to have a little look at this. Now, because we're nearing the end of the webinar together, we won't have a chance to go through this totally, but have a little think about where you might start this time. Even though this is still a level 1, this one feels a little bit more challenging, I think. But think about some of the strategies we've demonstrated with the other 2.
Yes. Okay. So let me quickly. I think I've got one strategy that I could talk about that is slightly different to what we've done. I mean, there's one strategy which is very similar. So if we look at column 3 to start with,
yep,
we can work out what an apple and a banana are as a pair.
Which that kind of thinking we've done before. Yep.
Then use that in column 2 because there's an apple and a banana there. So that's 17, and then you've got 2 plums left. You can work out the value of the plums.
Yes.
And once you know the value of the plums, you can go to the top row.
Yeah.
Go to the second row.
And the second row. Yeah. And then
you're done.
Drops up. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest something slightly different there.
Yes.
So I'm still going to use the 3rd column.
Okay.
The 3rd column can be used to work out what 1 apple and 1 banana are worth, because I know what 2 bananas and 2 apples, so I can do 1 of each. Now, if I look at the top 2 rows together,
yes,
I can see that I've got a pair of apple and banana, and another pair of apple and banana, and another pair of apple and banana.
You've got 3 lots of apple and banana.
Yes. Yes. And I've got 2 plums. So all together, the 45 plus 18, if I take both rows together, all of that comes to 63.
Absolutely.
And I know that 1 apple and 1 banana are half of 34, so they're 17.
Yes.
So I've got 3 lots of 17.
Yeah.
Plus 2 plums.
Yeah. I can't fit all this on one row, sorry. Not very neatly done. So all that is what we've got on the top 2 rows, we know all that comes to 63. And as you said, Charlie, we already know that an apple and banana is 17. So we've got 3 lots of 70. Oh, have I done too many?
I think you've written 4 lots of apple and banana.
I beg your pardon. Oh dear, there we go. Thank you.
So, yeah, and
I know this lot is 3 lots of 17.
So I can work out the rest.
So we could work out the rest, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So I hope that sharing these strategies has given everybody sort of some idea of the possible ways of working at these problems. And Liz and I used to work with somebody called Bernard, and he used to say, to be a good mathematician, you've got to be a good mathematical detective. And in a way, what we've been doing and what we've been encouraging you to do today is to look at all these clues. So there are sort of 8 sets of clues, 4 rows and 4 columns. There's sometimes you get the same information on a couple, but we're trying to decide which are the clues that are most helpful, which clues to go to first, which combination of clues. And there isn't a right or wrong way of going about this. There are lots and lots of ways. Some are really elegant and get you to the answer very quickly, but they're not necessarily, it doesn't mean that the other strategies are wrong.
No.
So we've possibly given away more than we normally do in a webinar, but we are hoping that this will encourage you to go and visit Fruity Totals, try the level 2 problems, try the level 3 problems. And Liz is going to talk a little bit about how to share strategies.
I am, that's right, Charlie. So we just wanted to remind you, thank you very much for coming along this morning. We wanted to remind you where you can find the tasks. So there you've got the URL for the task. It's just got Fruity on the end of the NRICH homepage. We will put a recording of today's webinar onto that page. We've given a link for in due course. If you would like to share your thinking about the problem, we would love to hear from you. And the best way to do that would be to use Twitter. So our Twitter handle, which ends, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, that would be really helpful, is @NRICHmaths, all lowercase, all one word. So what we'd be really interested to see is the thinking behind your solutions. And if possible, please also include the code from the settings so that other people could have a go at that same arrangement as well. So teachers, if you're on Twitter, please do share your class's thinking for some other arrangements of Fruity Totals. Finally, please teachers, it's really helpful for us if you could complete the evaluation form. You will receive an email with all these links in them with a link to the evaluation form. But if we post one in the chat as well, if you have a moment, if you have time right here and now, which is perhaps somewhat unlikely, then it would be great if you could complete it here and now. I think, therefore, that all that remains to be said is thank you very much for participating. We hope you have enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again at a future webinar. Thank you very much. Goodbye.